What's up, Unlocking Your Inner Strength listeners? How would you like to know how to use a timer app correctly and how long it should be set for to keep your creative powers at peak force? Well, I have good news for you. I've put together a special report showing you how to do this. Normally it's $45, but since you're a loyal listener of the show, you can get it for only $10 at unlockingyourinnerstrength.com/time.
You're listening to The Inner Strength Show. If you want to step into your greatness, you've come to the right place. Here is your host, the human strength expert, Kyle Newell.
What's up, everybody? It's Kyle once again with another episode of Unlocking Your Inner Strength. This is episode number 98. Last week, we were talking about fat loss and my approach to fat loss. I'll give you a little backstory in case you didn't listen to that or you want a refresher. I needed a new fitness goal for the next quarter. So I set goals every quarter. It's just kind of benchmarks to kind of hit with everything. And, I've really gone away from fat loss myself, once I was done competing in bodybuilding, just because it brings up a lot of body image things and all types of stuff like that. And I could kind of take it overboard. So it's not always the healthiest thing for me. So I said, okay, let me do something moderate. Checked my body fat. Week 1, I was 14%. So all right, let me get down to 10% for the summer and then maintain that, which is doable. 10% is not off the charts, but it would require a level of discipline. And it kind of raises my game up with everything because I'm more focused. Anyhow, I did my check-in this past week. I was down to 12%. So I dropped 2%. I'm not expecting to do that every week. What I did was I started using MyFitnessPal, started tracking my calories very simply. I'm going to go over some of the mistakes I made as well. And I upped my workouts. I got 4 workouts in last week, plus 2 jiu-jitsu sessions. So my level of activity is there. My sleep was really good, really solid. The mistake I made in week 1 is when I set my calories. And now keep in mind, in the past, I would always do severe dieting when I get ready for a bodybuilding show. I would be eating 1,700 calories a day for months. I'd mix in my cheat day here and there, but I would basically starve myself. It wasn't the smartest approach, but it was an extreme mentality, which is a big mistake that people make. So anyway, this time around, I took my basal metabolic rate. You can figure that out very simply by taking your body weight times 10. It's going to put you right in that ballpark. So about 2,400 calories. I weigh 240 pounds. Set my calories there. By Wednesday evening, I was feeling like crap. And I realized, my energy is just dragging. I'm not eating enough. So I bumped that up to 2,800. So that's where we're at with my fat loss journey. But what I wanted to go over today were some of the mistakes people make with fat loss. And the biggest one, I think, is waiting until the time is right. You're going to wait until Monday. Everybody's starting their next plan on Monday. I'm sure you've heard this before. When Monday comes around, after the weekend, listen, the time is never going to be right. The reason people keep putting it off to Monday, so Monday is an enemy of fat loss, in my opinion. The reason people put it off is because they have lack of clarity on what exactly to do. And they're scared. There's fear involved, which will both put you into freeze mode. So that's one of your survival mechanisms is freeze, flight, or fight. If we look at mind map. Now, if you look at mind mapping and how this ties in, a lack of clarity raises your level of stress and threat. You want to know the next steps, but sometimes you're not going to know the next steps until you begin moving in that direction. And the way you overcome fear, so fear really is a lack of confidence. Fear is thinking too far out into the future. The way you overcome a lack of confidence is you start taking action. So rather than waiting until Monday to start your diet, you start right away. It doesn't matter if today's a Tuesday or a Wednesday or a Thursday, you start. And you just start by, like I said last week, you write down what you ate or you track it on your phone. Just whatever you start measuring and paying attention to is going to improve instantaneously. So you can't keep putting this off because time is never going to be right. And then once you commit to something, you have 2 types of people, and you got to know what type you are when it comes to dieting. You have people that need very rigid rules and people that need freedom, a lot more wiggle room, and they just kind of know what they can do and they can go by feel. They're more intuitive with how their body is feeling. It doesn't matter which one you are. Obviously, I was, brought up through bodybuilding as one that was very rigid and measured everything and wrote everything down and really kind of micromanaged it. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I will tell you that you have to find something that's functional and sustainable when it comes to dieting. Functional means you can do it in any setting, anywhere, and sustainable means you can do it forever. Once people get over the mental hurdle of the lack of clarity and fear of starting a fat loss journey, then the next biggest mistakes they make are the extreme approach, which I highlighted that I've done before, because that goes directly against forming habits. If it's not sustainable, it means way too much willpower is involved. You'll never form a habit around anything that's based in willpower. Willpower is doing shit you don't want to do. The brain will only form habits around stuff it finds desirable and pleasurable. So with that being said, too extreme of an approach, not going to work. I guarantee you, like I said, if you just start tracking your food, you'll see an improvement. Most people greatly underestimate how many calories or how much food they're eating on a daily basis. I know I did that when I started tracking. I'm like, man, and I could tell by how I felt because I'm still eating a decent amount of food, but I could feel that drop. So that goes into the next point I want to talk about, which is kind of next level with fat loss, but that's this idea of biofeedback. What's up, Unlocking Your Inner Strength listeners? How would you like to know how to use a timer app correctly and how long it should be set for to keep your creative powers at peak force? Well, I have good news for you. I've put together a special report showing you how to do this. Normally it's $45, but since you're a loyal listener of the show, you can get it for only $10 at unlockingyourinnerstrength.com/time. So you have the scale, you have your physical measurables that you can look at. But sometimes those aren't going to change, and that's fine. You don't get all pissy and depressed about it and go off the wagon. You got to look at biofeedback. How's your energy? Is your energy crap or is it good? How's your mental focus? How's your attitude? How's your performance? How is your sweat rate? Sweat and urine will be elevated when you're in fat loss mode. Lyle McDonald's talked about this in the past. Something I've always noticed. When I'm in fat loss mode, my urination level goes way up. And there's something that it kind of relates to that I did a presentation on years ago called squishy fat. And it's not too much science, but it's something that bodybuilders will tell you will happen where your fat kind of softens up before that next phase of fat loss hits. But you got to look at your biofeedback and you got to realize that if you follow the process, just like any plan, then you're succeeding. Even if the scale doesn't change that week or if your body fat does not come down, it's okay. Keep following the process. Now, your body, to touch on what we talked about last week, has a set point. It doesn't want to drop too low, right? The leaner you get, the more refeeds you're going to have to do. Refeeds is a whole separate topic in cheat meals. I'm going to do that in a different podcast probably next week because people want to use them and they have no business using them, meaning they're still way too fat. And there's a scientific reason behind how to do a full day refeed and a scientific approach. But to sustain something, if you're in a slight deficit, you're going to have periods of time where you refeed or you take breaks. Most people don't take breaks from their diet, and their diet might last 30 days, and then they can't stick with it, and then they fall off and gain some more weight back. And it's all rooted in a misunderstanding of how the brain works and how habit is formed. How does fat loss happen? The first thing, you got to mobilize the fatty acids from the fat cells. You have to get them out. Then you have to transport them to the muscles to be burned as fuel, okay? And the burning of fuel is the utilization. So you have mobilization, transport, and utilization. Mobilization, transport, and utilization. You have 3 steps, and they all require a deficit, and they require insulin being a little lower. If insulin's lower, there's a hormone called hormone-sensitive lipase that's going to be elevated. That has to be elevated for fat loss to happen. And these all happen easier, I might add, if we're getting adequate sleep. Sleep is the best diet in the world. Now, as far as mobilizing, one thing you have to know with fat loss is for men, our stubborn area fats, it's the lower abdomen and love handles. For women, it's the glutes and the thighs. If you touch those areas to the skin, it's going to be colder than the rest of your body. The reason it's colder is because it has a poor blood supply. There's a different type of fat cell located in there. It's called an alpha cell, alpha receptor. It's got a very poor blood supply. The problem is if you can't mobilize those fat cells to get them out to be used, you can't lose them. So you have these stubborn areas of fat that are really, frankly, a bitch to try to lose. The reason I went to intermittent fasting years ago was not for health reasons at that time. It was that I came across research that showed you can actually increase blood flow to those stubborn fat areas through fasting. Now, you can't fast all the time, and I was, I had to perform in the gym because I was getting ready for a show, so I adopted intermittent fasting. So it helps with getting the mobilization part and transport part of the fat loss equation in those stubborn areas of fat. Last thing I'll talk about today with fat loss. You don't need to go crazy with supplements. Make sure your diet's on point. Make sure your hydration's on point, and make sure that you're sleeping adequately. If those aren't on point, don't worry about any supplements. Now, as far as legal supplements, caffeine, tyrosine, and yohimbine hydrochloride, that combo is very effective with fat loss. Caffeine, tyrosine, or yohimbine HCl. It's effective. Take it on an empty stomach. I will post actually below this one of our fat loss protocols that we use that's designed specifically for fat loss. And it really goes into the science of mobilization, transport, utilization. Most people go about this all wrong. Fat loss supplements are only going to help you a little bit. I've done stuff that's legal and illegal. Even the illegal stuff does not make a huge difference. When you're trying to get down to super lean levels for bodybuilding, it helps. But then there's always a price to pay when you come off that stuff. To keep it simple, caffeine, tyrosine, yohimbine hydrochloride, HCl. Remember biofeedback. Remember Mondays is not the best day to start your diet. And I'm just using that as a metaphor because if you keep waiting until Monday, it's just a lack of clarity and it's fear about what's going to happen. You'll figure it out once you take the first step. You'll figure it out once you take the first step. And remember, you don't have to be perfect on your nutrition. Perfect doesn't exist. Stick with it as much as you can. Make sure it's functional and sustainable. That's all I have for episode number 98, the second one on fat loss, and I will do one on cheat meals coming up. If you haven't already subscribed on iTunes to the podcast, please do so and leave a review when you get a chance. And if you're watching this on Facebook Live, feel free to share this video with somebody that is interested in this topic. I do a lot of mindset stuff, do a lot of stuff on the body, anything that really interests me, because if it interests me, it means I'm passionate about it and I'll be able to teach it better. So that's all I got. Thanks for tuning in, and I will catch you all later.
You've been listening to The Inner Strength Show. If you enjoyed the show, remember to subscribe, rate, and review us in iTunes.